Is it time for a white collar revolution in the United States through peaceful use of the system to serve the purposes of white American liberation? I think so. So, why do I want to get into this? Well, I wanted to talk about leftist nationalism. Now, leftist nationalism is common amongst, different Marxist nationalist organizations throughout Latin America, Africa. One of the more famous ones is the ANC in Africa. Another one might be Muammar Gaddafi's Libya was a leftist nationalist organization. So, essentially, what people need to understand, at least as long as I can remember, and I was born in 1983, as long as I can remember, there has been a sort of belittling and demoralization of white Americans in this country that reached its apex probably, I'd say really right now, but it reached its apex in the Trump administration. And it started gearing up under Obama and then reached its apex under Trump, and now it's really at its apex as far as the demoralization of whites through the school systems and law enforcement, things of that nature. Now, back when I was more, I was never officially involved with any groups of any kind because I never saw a point. I never really agreed with any groups. I have been to protests and things like that, or not protests, but rallies that were counter-protested back when I was a kid. And I realized a long time ago, law enforcement is on the side of the radical left. Okay, it's not on the side of white America. It's not on the side of conservatives. As much as conservatives want to think that law enforcement is on their side or that law enforcement is conservative, it's not. I'm not really conservative. It took a lot of self-reflection for me to come to that conclusion. But really, if you're really for white Americans, you can't really be conservative, because conservatism in the U.S. has become synonymous with capitalism. It's become synonymous with exporting our jobs overseas. It's become synonymous with importing people from East Asia and Latin America to take our jobs. It's become synonymous with a lot of things that are very deleterious to the white American. Okay? Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, these jobs, a lot of conservatives, they use the argument, white people don't want to do these jobs. That's not true. My grandmother, back in the way back when, in the early 1900s, she picked cotton, and she also picked a number of other agricultural products. My mother in Pennsylvania picked tomatoes and strawberries, and you got paid by the pail. But those jobs are not available to white American children anymore. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, white people don't want these jobs. White people don't want these jobs. It's not true. I mean, we might not want the jobs, but we do need the jobs, and we will take the jobs. I've worked a lot of jobs I didn't want, but I needed. I was a cashier at a grocery store. One of my worst jobs was being a cashier at a grocery store. I did different retail jobs that I didn't care for as much as I did my landscaping jobs and things like that. But landscaping, for example, when I was a landscaper, I did a lot of landscaping, hardscaping, fence construction, roofing, things like that. These jobs are no longer available like they were, or if they are available, you're undercut because of the availability of illegal migrant labor. And these things are just not good for white Americans. I mean, if somebody can hire a Guatemalan or a Mexican to do the same job that they have to pay you a fair wage to do, because they got to pay you what you're worth, but they don't have to pay the Guatemalan or the Mexican what he's worth, then you are not going to get that job. I mean, it's that simple. You might have a couple foremen that are white, and that's usually how it works. The people in charge are white, and everybody underneath is some kind of something else, And that's just how it goes. Now, the tech field, you have a lot of legal migrants from the H-2B or I forget which one, H-1, whatever, the visas, the work visas. You got a lot of the tech jobs being taken by East Indians and East Asians that are being brought here by the big tech companies, and this is not working out for the average white American. Then in the school systems, you have you basically have critical race theory being taught, trying to teach white children, and succeeding in many times over, trying to teach white children that they're evil from birth, that they've committed the original sin of racism simply by existing. And this is what's going on in our school systems, but it's losing because parents are using the system to fight back against this. And that's the biggest thing. What I want to point out in this video is, if you think about it, white people taking back their dignity, taking back their self-respect, taking back their civil rights. This is a color revolution. White's a color too. Don't forget that. So what you got to remember is white is a color too. It's a color revolution, and there's no need for violence. We can use the system to get done what we need, just like the cultural Marxists have. One of the problems I think that white civil rights activists have had, whether we're talking about George Lincoln Rockwell, or whether we're talking about even some of the conservative groups that, like John Birch or whatever, they're reactive, okay? They don't have intelligence behind them. But certain elements that have corrupted them do, like the ones that are using them to get done economic things that are bad for white people, they creep in there and they do what they're doing. There's no intelligence, no patience, no ability to understand what's happening. I remember in a video I made years ago, I was talking about cultural Marxism didn't take effect overnight. Okay? Cultural Marxism goes all the way back to the late 1800s with the influx of Italian and Central Asian and Central European anarchists coming into the country and working together to overthrow our system, okay? And it took a century for cultural Marxism to take effect like it has, but that never stopped them. They just kept plugging along and plugging along and plugging along. I highly encourage people to read a book called Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, but there's no need to go against the system. The trick is to use the system to get done what you need to get done. And that's where it comes in. Use the ability that, like the thing is with the Patriots Front March in Philadelphia. Something about white civil rights activists, they have this romanticism idea. This romantic idea that, we're going to be fighting in the streets for our freedom and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm sure Antifa and BLM have the same view. Take a look at what it looks like when BLM and Antifa are fighting in the streets. It looks like a bunch of frickin' retards having a disorganized group convulsion in the streets. It is not organized. It is not serving any end but to allow us to say, look at the violence, look at the rapes, look at the arson, look at the disorder, look at what's going on. Okay? That's what happens when white people do the same thing. I remember a lot of people were celebrating when Richard Spencer punched that prostitute or hooker or whatever the hell she was in the face, and he was bragging about it. He punched some dumb chick in the face that tried to attack him. And then he was seen as a womanizer, an aggressive attacker of women, and all this. And this is what is the problem when people on the white side of things get together and do things like that. It ends up coming back to bite them in the butt. Meanwhile, Madonna, who threatened to murder the President of the United States, who remembers that, I'll leave a link in the description, during the Women's March, that was not painted by the media as negative, okay? Or when, for Christ's sakes, funny story about the Women's March. When that took place, that was at the inauguration of Trump, I thought it was a joke. I honestly thought it was a joke. There was a girl on Facebook I was friends with. She was a Mexican girl. And she posted a bunch of women dressed like vaginas. And I'm like, what the hell is this shit? And she said, turn on the TV. And I told her, I don't own a TV. And she goes, go on YouTube, check this out. Put in YouTube, Washington, D.C. Women's March. So I put that in, and I'm like, holy hell, what the hell is this? But the thing is, this doesn't get the same negative coverage, it gets positive coverage by the media who's in cahoots with these people. Okay? So you need to understand that. So you need to learn how to use words, use phrases, and use the system to get done what you need to get done. Stop tolerating racism against your people. This is racism. But don't fight back with violence. Fight back with words. You learn to use the words that the left uses. You know, affirmative action is not affirmative action. Affirmative action is institutionalized racism. It's systemic racism against white Americans. That's what affirmative action is. It is institutionalized and systemic racism that has been implemented against white Americans by an oppressive oligarchical class that is decided who wins and who loses based on their race and solely on their race. That's what affirmative action is. Okay? Stop calling it affirmative action. Stop arguing. It's racism. Call it what it is. Okay? Now, when somebody gets in your face, you know, this is the thing. Well, nobody should be getting in your face because we can do this all from the comfort of our own homes. Now, why do I promote this this means of doing things? Well, I like winning. Okay? I'm sure you do too. So the way that we win as white civil rights activists is not through violence and aggression and all this other crazy nonsense, but through promoting peace, by promoting social justice for all Americans. The one thing that I think, this is the problem, I really changed my political views. I became very, I don't want to say liberal, but I became very mellow and calm and understanding about this. White people need to stop with the line of white supremacy. There's no need for white supremacy. What you need to do is promote social justice for all and explain that there cannot be social justice for everyone until there is social justice for white people. White people are the only group of people that the law is discriminating against, the media is discriminating against, that it's okay to discriminate against, and you need to make that known. Now, these leftist, now people wonder why I say communism with U.S. values, what would it look like? It would look like something kind of like Peronism with U.S. progressivism. Now, Juan Perón was known as an ardent anti-communist, although he did retain good relations with both the USSR and the United States. People might know about the Dirty War, where his widow and then President of Argentina, Isabel Perón, authorized the Argentinian the Argentinian anti-communist strike forces. Basically, they were squads, death squads, that were sent out to eradicate any and all radical leftists, and it was supported by Isabel Perón. And the Peronist government was supported by the United States, France, Brazil. See, Brazil, Portugal. I'm thinking colonial now. But Brazil, I forget who else, but Brazil, the United States, France, we supported the Peronist regime in the 70s to help protect Argentina, which is one of the larger countries in South America, from falling to communism, okay? So that's how that went. But if you really look at Peronism, really look at true Peronism, true justicialism, as per Juan Perón, the number one noble truth of Juan Perón, yes, that's right, Juan Perón spoke the noble truths even better than the Buddha. He had 20 of them. I think Buddha had, 4? But Juan Perón's first noble truth is that the only real judgment of how well a government is doing is it delivering for the people? Is it? Politics is only a tool. Politics is a tool to get done what needs to be gotten done for the people. There are many aspects of justicialism that would be considered far left, many that would be considered far right, and generally speaking, it is a centrism. Okay? You see the same thing in U.S. progressivism. Ultimately, I think why I'm making this video has to do with the Patriots Front nonsense in Philadelphia, where a lot of people will go, somebody in my comments section asked me about it. What did I think about it? I pointed out how they ran away when they were confronted by Philadelphians. He stated they didn't run away, they stood their ground. Frankly, it doesn't matter if they stood their ground or ran away. Either way, it looks bad. Remember, Richard Spencer stood his ground. Look how that turned out. You get what I'm saying? George Zimmerman stood his ground. Look how that turned out. Okay? The key is, how do we affect change without putting ourselves at risk of being deemed racist agitators, or being deemed anti-American, or being deemed these things. And the way is to use the system to affect change through the system. Not to, that's why I stated before, if there was ever to be a political party, I already looked into creating a political party, and it's a clusterfuck. It really is. It's very hard to create a 501c4. So essentially, I would say create a special interest group or a political action committee, far more than a political party, to basically affect change in a diverse sense amongst all political parties, but of course primarily the Democrats and the Republicans. It's better to, the power of the diaspora. The power of the diaspora. What's the diaspora? The Jewish people are a diaspora. Africans are a diaspora. Like, not Africans, but sub-Saharan Africans that have been dispersed across the world due to slavery are a diaspora. The power of the diaspora, this is, Anton LaVey spoke about this too. I think it was either Satan Speaks or The Devil's Notebook. One of the reasons Satanism is never going to get stopped is because we don't, like, well, I'm not a Satanist now, but Satanists don't look alike. There's no way to tell who's a Satanist, who isn't a Satanist, etc. So in case people decide that they don't like Satanism, it's not that hard for Satanists to go, oh, well, I'm not a Satanist. Okay, so there's power in the diaspora. There's power in not being part of a group, in the sense that when that group, like the Tea Party or the Occupy Wall Streeters, remember, Occupy Wall Street was about economics. Didn't take long for the media to turn it into a race war, did it? Occupy Wall Street made a lot of sense. Now it's Black Lives Matter. Didn't take long for that to mutate through the use of the media. And that's all for this. This is really more of a rant. There's going to be some links in the description on color revolutions and things like that. Don't forget, white's a color too. And you don't have to resist the system to make change. You can use the system to make change. That's all for this video.